Hi, so this is our second Ask Me Anything for Techstars LA in an effort to provide more detail and visibility to what we do at Techstars leading up to our spring 2023 cohort. So if you're watching this, you've probably seen a couple of clips on LinkedIn. You've probably had a couple of conversations with folks in the Techstars office, and you want to learn more. And so we thought we would gather a handful of our esteemed mentors tonight to talk through a topic that is top of mind for everyone, which is what is happening in e-commerce. And we anticipate that a number of you will be either running an e-commerce or e-commerce enablement business. And so the lessons, the trends, the things we talk about tonight should be top of mind for you, and just a little bit of a taste of what we believe mentorship as a Techstars cohort accelerator participant will look like for you. So I'm so excited to be joined by everyone tonight. I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself and then ask everyone else to introduce themselves quickly before we get into a great conversation about the future of e-commerce. My name is Kimberly Nixon. I am a venture capitalist. I run a fund called Open Venture Capital. I'm also a VC in residence for Techstars LA, which means I help to recruit and mentor the cohort participants. My background is in consumer goods. I was an operator for a very long time before becoming a venture capitalist. And I am really excited to be here with you all tonight. I'm going to introduce the other person on the Techstars team first, Alex. And Alex, when you're done, if you would just choose someone else to introduce themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I am Alex Tonhazy. I'm leading recruiting efforts for Techstars LA. We have 4 programs next year, 2 of which Kim mentioned that start in the spring of 2023. I actually have a background in healthcare, so this is a bit out of my wheelhouse, but I'm excited to learn today. I come from a startup studio called Olive Ventures, and before that, I was in venture banking at Pacific Western Bank. But yeah, I will turn it over to Lucas, actually, who was pre-recording, showing us all of his neat art and furniture in his house.
The fancy toys around the office, for sure. Lucas Dickey, I'm both mentor to Techstars as well as alum. I was in Techstars LA class of 18 with Anna Barber before Matt took over. Big fan of what Matt's been doing ever since then, and have been part of the mentor network on that side. My background is career product manager through many verticals. I've done ad tech and martech. I did my e-com days when I was at Amazon, did the whole working backwards PR FAQ, pitched to Bezos, Jassy, and Wilkie, and got approval for a bunch of millions of dollars of budget off cycle, and saw things get launched before doing roughly 8 years in VC-backed businesses in San Francisco and LA before co-founding Furnish, which is the logo on the hat and on the back, always swagged out. Started that company in 2017, which was a furniture rental business. At the time, we said furniture subscription, very much leaning into the subscription economy. The goal was to create a circular economy business in furniture because a lot of furniture goes to landfill, and we wanted to mitigate furniture going to landfill. At the same time, we wanted millennials and Gen Zs who were moving at a frequent pace to kind of have furniture that made them feel comfortable in their home, and they actually wanted to be there. And obviously in the nesting era of the pandemic, there was a lot of sort of tailwinds associated with nesting in place and getting good furniture. So that was 2017 that Michael Barlow and I co-founded the Furnish business. And I am now starting a new job as of next Monday. It's not public yet, so can't say it just yet. However, I'm also an angel investor and have been an operator for a number of years. And with that, I will pass the mic over to Molly.
Thank you, Lucas. Hi, everyone. Molly Kang. My background, I started as a management consultant with Bain in the retail consumer group, was in the private equity group for a bit, doing due diligence, then got fascinated with the state of bridal in the US, which is this massive underserved market dominated by David's Bridal, which has like a negative NPS score of probably close to 100. And so then went to business school at Stanford to sort of incubate this idea I had floating in my head to disrupt the bridal space. When I was graduating, one of my professors was like, hey, I think you should do this. I'll write you an angel check. So that's how I got started as a founder myself. So spent 5+ years building an e-commerce D2C brand in wedding dresses. We were scaling that, raised quite a bit of venture capital, making some great traction, had decided to go sort of digital discovery to omni-channel. So then we had opened 14 showrooms across the US. So have a bit of experience both on the e-com and also on the retail side. And then COVID hit in March 2020 and all weddings stopped globally, which was a very unexpected event. And so as we were trying to figure out what to pivot to, if we can even call it that, I mean, we were in weddings. And some of my team members joked, let's start sewing masks. And I was like, well, that's not going anywhere fast. One of my early stage seed investors, Paul Arnold at Switch, was like, hey, Molly, come be a VC with me. I said no at first because VCs are the devil, as every founder knows. But then he convinced me after a few months of talking. And so now I sit on the other side of the table. And we at Switch invest in early stage, pre-seed, seed stage startups with exceptional founders. We're tech generalists. We end up doing a lot of, SaaS software marketplaces, but we kind of look at everything. Yeah, and that's my background. And I will turn it over to Andrew.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Peace. I'm the former CFO of Happy Returns. I'm now the Senior Director of Growth at Happy Returns by PayPal. We got acquired in June of 2021 by PayPal. I started Happy Returns in October of 2018 as their first time CFO for them. Prior to that, I was kind of a little bit of a serial entrepreneurial CFO for a couple startups, one called Telescope and one called Brighter, before going to Happy Returns. And prior to that, I spent my career in finance at Disney, and decided to make the leap before the golden handcuffs got too golden. Right now, today, I focus on business development and partnerships. So I own all of Happy Returns location network, which is 6,000 plus locations under contract, hopefully getting to a larger number this quarter, and as well as all of our international strategy and business development operations.
Wow, I could spend all day talking to all of you. You all have such incredible backgrounds, and that's really what we're here to showcase, is to help the participants or the applicants that are future participants to understand the depth, the breadth, the expertise that exists within our mentor network, which is one of a kind and definitely a differentiator for Techstars. I'm going to switch my question order around. I know you all have the run of show, but since we just talked e-commerce enablement, D2C growth, or excuse me, e-com to D2C growth and omni-channel growth, and we've also talked subscription, I'd love to just kind of get a sense across all three of those, enablement, subscription, and omni-channel, what you're seeing in the space now, how things are different from pre-pandemic, and if you were talking to a founder today that building a subscription business, building something in e-commerce enablement, or building a brand from scratch, a D2C brand from scratch, what are you seeing, and what's your kind of critical piece of advice for those founders today? So I'll start with Molly, and we'll go Andrew and Lucas after that.
Great, we can start with me. Yeah, with omnichannel, it is interesting. It was such a fascinating time to sort of see COVID hit and then to see the behavior changes that had happened when obviously everything fled to online. So I want to say it was a little bit of like the gold rush age for e-com. So I was very jealous of some of my founder friends who had purely sort of digital presence and pure e-com products. Just felt like wrong place, wrong time for us in omnichannel. However, I will say now, I think, we've all sort of seen that shift in the consumer appetite now to seeking offline experiences and trying to get back to, quote unquote, normal. And so something that was really an anecdote that I was thinking about sharing today that I thought was fascinating. I was talking to a founder who is building a company that's sort of predicated on this thesis that I couldn't agree more with, that sort of back in the day when D2C was first starting, digital acquisition was sort of the acquisition arbitrage. It was, too expensive to be signing leases for all these stores and having customers discover your brand, or you had these gatekeepers like buyers or distributors. And so building a D2C brand was the way to cheaply, with very little capital and in a scrappy way, be discovered and put your product out there. And I think it's weirdly enough become completely opposite. Now, digital acquisition is the most expensive form of customer acquisition. And so this founder, based on this thesis, was now building completely the reverse. Is building a chain of stores where CPG brands can be discovered, and then can turn that into a sticky online customer and build in recurring e-com revenue. So I just was laughing because everything is old is new and everything new is old. And so I thought that was a really fascinating shift that I think that founders should really be thinking deeply about in terms of thinking about new business models, especially if you're thinking omni-channel, of how do you acquire the customer? Where is he, she discovering your brand? Where is he hearing about you? And especially in the post iOS update world, thinking about being creative and getting out of maybe some of these modes of thinking that we've fallen into in the past several years, about what that sort of acquisition arbitrage is. And so anyway, I'll leave it there, but that's sort of a topic that I've been nerding out about recently and thinking a lot about, especially given my experience where with my brand, we discovered very much so that omni-channel and opening these physical locations was sometimes even a cheaper way to acquire customers than running a million Instagram ads. Yeah.
Thank you, Molly. And I think that's such an important point that you make, that there has to be some space made for evolution, for how the industry is evolving. And so when you're building your business, and for many of the founders that will end up in the accelerator program, they've either started this business in the last 2 to 3 years under one business model and under one premise. And so now, as things are ever evolving and changing, that need to be flexible, to pivot, to really kind of test. That's really an area where Techstars is beneficial, because we want you to test. We want you to be able to think through what makes sense for your business and for your growth, with these brilliant minds as kind of your guides, and giving you an idea of what's the best next thing to test, to see what your growth, what your path for growth looks like, or where your costs can be more efficient. So I love the idea of kind of looking at what's old is new again, and rethinking what your path to growth looks like and acquisition looks like, and how you build a sticky consumer business. Andrew, do you want to talk about enablement and what you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I'd actually like to talk a little bit about what I'm seeing in e-commerce in general as well, which is, because it actually lends a lot to our business, which is that the consumer change that happened during the pandemic has dramatically changed what corporations need to do to, e-com companies need to do to be successful, selling brands. If you're selling anywhere in the apparel, footwear, accessories space, physical goods that you have any return rate whatsoever, as well as just in general consumer expectations, I think there's two big things. One is that the large companies that used to be slow and dumb and not be very good at omni-channel, that, like the Macy's of the world, and even the Bed Bath & Beyond, which are terrible at what they're doing right now, but like still figured out how to do this during the pandemic, and Dick's Sporting Goods and all these guys, right, which we all thought of like as dumb, slow, big, giant companies that weren't doing very well. Well, they took the pandemic time to figure out what they were doing, and used their stores as fulfillment centers to speed up outbound delivery, and made their stores more of a showcase experience for customers. They don't care if they buy there or not, right? Like all of that really changed, as well as consumer desire to be able to make returns really easy, because they were buying so much e-commerce, and to do that shopping at home and do the bracketing that they like to do. Like those big changes have been just monumental shifts in how you need to think about that. And I was kind of laughing when Molly was saying, like, what's old is new. Like consumers, their favorite thing, their most favored return solution is buy online, return in store. That's what they want to do. They want to do a buy online, return in store. Our entire company is based on the fact that most D2Cs can't do that. And so we have 5,000 locations nationwide that can do that for them. So they can still have that same experience. Consumer can still have the same experience. But you can actually get a lot of value and a lot of conversion out of moving that consumer up a level if they come into your own store and experience it through that, even if they bought online. I think the other big thing that I'm seeing in e-commerce is that profitability has become much more important. It used to be like, hey, the ramp is long. It takes a long time for these to be going. That's not the case anymore. Like, they expect these companies to be profitable. And if you go look at any e-com publicly traded company right now, that like, go look at Allbirds stock, go look at ThreadUp stock, go look at Rent the Runway stock, right? They are all getting pummeled because they're not showing the profitability to their investors that you may have been able to get away with 3, 4, 5 years ago. On the enablement side, like I said, I think that's where enablement is starting to be really effective, is if you can help drive profitability and prove profitability improvements for those e-com merchants, you can get a lot of wins, because what used to be like grow at all costs is now I got to grow, but I also have to be profitable doing it.
Thank you. That's great insight. And on the VC side and in general, and founders should absolutely know that your thoughts on profitability are spot on. And we get a lot of questions about, if those large public companies aren't doing well, what chance does small D2C starting today have, and how much runway and how long of a runway do they have? And the other thing I'll mention about Techstars that I think is really different and beneficial to a founder and to someone that's still in the early stages of growth, is that you can have a lot of those conversations with VCs, with funders very early on, so that you can start to build some of that into your model. It might change your path. It might change how long you think you have. It might change your product mix. It might change your acquisition cost and your cost of sales strategy. So there's a lot of room for those types of conversations while in cohort, and the time is now, because the expectations are changing. They are changing very rapidly, and there is an expectation that you can build a sustainable brand faster and more efficiently at this point. Lucas, you want to talk about subscription?
How about I just talk about a glom of the various things that have been talked
glom
about,
it
and
up.
that can include subscription.
Alex, make sure we get a cut of just gloms.
Glomming, exactly. And the beauty of following Molly and Andrew is I get to piggyback on things that they have said, of which I had kind of follow-on thoughts. Also a bit of Techstars centricity here that I want to allude to. So I was just on the call prior to this one with an alum from the Techstars 21 class, so Matt's class from last summer. And their particular business, he was talking about just the cost of customer acquisition through paid marketing, which I know is an area we're going to spend more time talking about, but specifically like how astronomical that has become through the primary social channels. And what that made me think about in general was, and maybe this is to Molly's point as well, is like being thoughtful around the array of different customer acquisition channels you have available to you. And so while you may have a predilection or affinity for a particular channel because it speaks to you, that the mixes may change over time, right? And so right now, paid marketing is expensive. Is it a partnerships model? Is it leveraging, like if you're a D2C business, do you go to the partnership model with retailers who are looking to use excess capacity within their stores, like square footage that they can't figure out how to utilize? So there's interesting partnership models to contemplate on like the omni side of things. So being mindful of ways to find leverage inexpensively, which could be image collateral generation for social, because say TikTok requires, I just learned this in the last call. So TikTok requires that you feed the beast more with more content faster. Like the saturation point hits sooner, and it kind of wants you to feed new images. Whereas like Facebook and Google channels maybe allow for things to run a little bit longer before they kind of get stale according to the engine. So being thoughtful around diversifying customer acquisition channels and not having up too much. I think the other thing to be mindful of is just cost of capital, that we're alluding to maybe the VC side of things, but in e-com in particular, you're buying inventory. Whether you're direct to consumer and it's your own product, or you're buying it and you're retailing it, you still have to get inventory capital. And even the inventory capital providers are being hit really hard in the financial markets and capital markets right now. So there's layoffs happening through the sort of accounts receivable based lines of credit. So being really thoughtful and efficient about usage of capital is particularly important right now. The one asterisk I'll put on that, Kim, is like the world of VC sometimes is very time sensitive and focused, right? So people forget cycles that we operate within, like 2 and 5 and 10 and 20 and 25 year cycles. And we're in a particular cycle right now that will probably change in roughly 18 to 24 months. And everyone that says this type of investment is the only kind that works, they're going to change their mind roughly 24 months from now. So to Molly's point around, VC being the devil, I don't think they're the devil. I love venture capitalists. However, there is changing or chasing of opinions there. So being mindful of that. And I think that's where Techstars can be really helpful. There's like mentors who are on 3rd, 4th, 5th businesses. Sometimes they're like Andrews who can say, yeah, I remember, coming out of the 2008 to 12 crisis, these things were different. Well, guess what? They're good to be mindful of now because we're in the crisis situation that we are. I think the last comment I have maybe, which is very apropos to say the furnish business is like omnichannel and partnerships based, was finding a new channel to customer acquisition that was maybe atypical to what we thought. We thought we were going to be a pure D2C business. And within our Techstars cohort 3-month time period, we did surveying our customers to figure out where they actually lived. And we found that 70 to 75% of our customers lived in A and A+ class multifamily buildings. These are large apartment complexes operated by Avalon Bay, Essex, Equity, UDR. They have leasing on site, they have gyms, they have parking. Well, 70, 75% of our customers live in those buildings. Should we be considering marketing directly through those as channel partners for us? So we went a B2C or B2B2C path with them to the leasing offices. And then we went one step further, which was real estate tech venture. Shout out to John Helm and Aaron Rue, ended up investing in our business and led our seed round. And all of a sudden we had connections to real estate investment trusts and owner operators who are managing hundreds of thousands of apartment complexes or units rather, which could end up becoming, I'm just doing a rim shot here if you could see it, omnichannel partners for placing our furniture for display purposes inside their physical real estate. And we got that for free, like it cost us nothing through partnerships. So can you be clever and hack your way into interesting, like low customer acquisition costs, being mindful of cost of capital, cost of VC these days.
And, just a natural plug for Techstars, but a lot of those partnerships could be identified, or at the very least, conversations can start through many of these mentorship relationships. And our mentors work across the board, just in the largest organizations and across several industries. And so you might find yourself, after doing some customer discovery, with an area of partnership that Techstars can help make some intros in. So thanks for handing that right on over to me, Lucas.
I got another one for you, which is like being mindful of those who participate in the cohort with you, right? So in our case, there was a company called Catalog that Patrick and Jacobo were running, and it was around generating catalog assets for marketplaces. And we at Furnish needed a bunch of imagery, right? And so collaboration, we were able to identify together, and they were looking deep into social channels for marketing purposes, and were able to share their learnings in real time with us in a sort of inside the family sort of like, we sat side by side and ultimately ended up sharing an office space together for 18 months or so as well. So leverage your cohort participants.
Yeah, there's some type of magic that happens in that kind of in the bubble. And for the viewer, when you're watching this, Techstars LA's office space here in Culver City is beautiful. Every cohort participant has their own office, but there are a number of sessions that are collaborative in nature, and there are a number of opportunities to work with either your co-founders or with your cohort accelerated participants. So there are many opportunities to have brainstorm sessions, whiteboard sessions, to think through ways that you can help each other's businesses. And some of this magic happens, very organically, because either you have similar customer discovery needs, or you can help each other through a different part of the journey. So thank you for both of those examples, Lucas.
Kim, do you mind if I chime in on one more thought?
You got one more? Okay, go for it.
Only because you asked subscription particularly, and I didn't talk about it very much. And Molly can probably attest to this, being full-time VC, or you can, but many VCs are, they would almost set recurring revenue businesses ahead of all other businesses right now. So if you are a SaaS business or recurring revenue in some form, so if you are e-com and there's a logical way for you to offer recurring revenue, there's like it counts towards more from a points perspective as they evaluate your business if it's assumed that you have fairly low attrition rates associated with your recurring revenue businesses. So if there's a way to make it make sense without like jamming square peg into round hole, be mindful, especially if you're in a capital raise phase right now, because I couldn't tell you how many entrepreneurs I know raising right now who've said, yeah, the VCs are discounting all of my like a la carte revenue in favor of my recurring revenue. So if there's a means to optimize for it, not at the expense of your business, be mindful of that.
Very much echo that one. One of the first things I did when I got to Happy Returns was to create a subscription model and go away from individual per item pricing as much as possible.
And just
And
to like
also,
complete
Kim,
the
I was
thought.
gonna
Go ahead.
chime in on one other thing on that note of, Lucas, you touched on it, of how VCs enter these cycles and these sort of pattern recognition trends, and you know, ecom and D2C was hot, and now it's not, and now it's very much out of favor, you know, amongst the VC community. But I think sort of a word, I don't know, of encouragement maybe to founders who are building ecom companies right now is that I think these are the moments of opportunity to build, because I think, you know, several years ago when it was sort of in vogue, too many people were starting ecom companies that shouldn't have been starting ecom companies. And so I think now that it's a bit fallen out of favor and people are taking a harder look and it's being much more closely scrutinized, I think now is a moment of opportunity to sort of build the best in class companies that are taking into account current trends. So I remember always, you know, feeling like I needed to hear that from the investor community a little bit as a founder of, you know, even when you're building things that aren't currently in vogue, like that's okay. And in fact, it's a moment of opportunity to really think clearly about what should get funded. And if investors are not reacting, you know, positively, then thinking about specifically why they aren't and iterating on that part of the business model.
It's the great narrative of Uber and Airbnb building during the 2009 to 12 period and coming out on the back end of that. Flip side, I would also say on the D2C and e-com side that people need to bear in mind is like consumers are still spending like crazy despite the current economy. And if you listen to any of the economists on a regular basis, they're like, why do they have the confidence they have to continue spending? So there's probably a there in terms of selling into an audience, as long as you can find efficiencies that will make the VC community feel comfortable with an investment in your business. But Molly, I totally agree with you in terms of being mindful. And you said maybe a word of encouragement, the others just caution, being mindful of optics of how VCs see it and how you maybe pitch it into them around the things they need to hear.
Yeah, and just to add to what both of you guys said, I think it's really important that people build the right teams now, because now is the opportunity you have to get the good talent that you did not have the opportunity to get the last 3-4 years, because every tech company was outbidding you left, right, and center for the top talent. And right now you can get some really great talent because all their stock has become worthless in a lot of these big companies. Just to be honest, like all their options are zero and are underwater. And it's a really great time for you to, now is a great time to be a startup, as long as you have a great idea and you can execute it well. And I would say, again, if you're going to be an e-com company, make sure you are a tech company. Do not just be a brand that sells online. You have to become a really great technology company to be a really successful e-commerce company, because that is one of those things that will truly differentiate you as you go on.
Can I piggyback on that one, Kim? Not that I'm piggybacking left and right here, but Andrew set me up for it. So I was on another call with someone earlier today, and I said, you know, they are a D2C business, and I said, is there enterprise value you can build around intellectual property such that when valuations and acquisitions are contemplated later, to Andrew's point, they're thinking about IP you built independent of brand or customer acquisition. It's like a custom ERP system you built that only like you could white label or sell separately independent of the core product, or maybe it becomes the core product over time. So Andrew, totally agree with you, you know, build it as a technology company first, and that'll probably set you up for more success in the long run.
Can I also share an anecdote on that to piggyback, Kim, if that's okay? I just think one anecdote that I can share as a founder myself, in case this is helpful to those, is sort of an aha moment looking back upon reflection, is, you know, we were a bit of a pure e-com brand play. And I started the company, 6+ years ago. That's when that was sort of the thing to do. And I remember a lot of my investors asking me about sort of like, well, what's our tech play, or what's the enablement, or what's the platform, the tool, the software, the picks and shovels, which, I love that phrase, right? In the gold rush, people who are looking for gold didn't make the money. It's people who sold the picks and shovels to the people digging for gold. And so when we were, the pandemic had hit, and now we were sitting on all this, all these sort of showroom samples of wedding dresses, and we didn't know what to do with it. And we were looking for outlets to sell them and to liquidate them. I had a moment where I was like, oh gosh, I think there's a business to be built here, to build a platform or a marketplace to sort of help with liquidation of inventory. And lo and behold, I feel like that's become this new wave in sort of circular economy and helping brands build a second website for offloading. And anyway, so I just think that in every business, when you face those moments of challenge and when you face those unexpected, things that happen like COVID, that was such a crazy red herring for us. Even in those moments, in hindsight, there are these moments of opportunity where there is a business to be built. And if you think about sort of like, what is the enablement or the software layer or the tech piece that you can build into, I think there are those nuggets that you can find.
Kim, you brought up a really good unintentionally Techstars Class 21 Max Retail Melody as the CEO, where the entire business is excess inventory that say Kohl's needs versus Macy's needs versus Bloomberg needs. One of them is running short and they need to move the supply between each other. It's already been acquired, so they have an obligation to fulfill it, and maybe can't fulfill it through their customers, but perhaps through a competitor, right? So they end up having these frenemy relationships. And Melody's built a very successful business thus far, early stages, exactly like, taking advantage of the pandemic and supply chain scenario that we're in.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, because if you didn't, I was going to bring it up.
And I was going to bring it up as well.
I was a lead mentor.
Since
I was a lead mentor of theirs.
I was setting you all up for that.
I'm just a big fan of Melody.
You were lead mentor, Andrew?
Yeah, I was one of their lead mentors. Yeah.
Why don't we?
And now I'm actually now moving on to being an advisor for them as well.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Why don't we just take a couple of minutes to just, if you wouldn't mind elaborating on, we'll go blind for the other two examples, but since we've brought up Max Retail, to the extent that you can talk through their progression through the accelerator last year, I think it'd be a great example, and people can go and Google as well and find the brand afterwards.
Yeah. So it was a really interesting experience, both for myself and for them. It was my first time being a mentor in the Techstars program. I've done advisory work before, but obviously my first time doing the mentorship for the program. Melody is like a total force of nature from a personality perspective. She is like, just energy all the time. And she also had like no ego about what was wrong, right? Or what she was doing wrong. And when you mix energy with no ego, like, it's pretty hard to fail in that respect. Like, if you're willing to take advice from all of these amazing people that are giving you advice on a daily basis and not get hurt by it at all, and be open to understanding what needs to change and what needs to go. Like, she had no idea how to raise money from investors before this, really. And like, all the work she got in terms of the pitch deck and everything from everyone, and I'm not just saying me, was a very small piece of this, like the entire Techstars, family that really helped her out. She walked away raising a very sizable round, recently, all based off of the Techstars, influence and meetings that got set up through it. So, and it really helped her understand like how we should understand my financials. What does that mean from a business planning perspective? What are the products I need to do? What does my team need to look like? What am I missing? And all of those meetings. And, I also helped get her in touch with a couple extra VCs on top, just to like, even just hear it and have conversations with them. And she she got a lot of value out of that, and now is running with that based on that.
And, I would love to just take a second to talk through the trend of circular economy and how she was able to kind of jump on top of what's happening in that space. So I'd love to, number one, hear about what you all are seeing in this space. but also were there specific, and maybe we don't need to go into the specifics, but were you able to work with her to think through what metrics she should be looking at, how she should be presenting, the idea of, extending the lifespan and extending the revenue path for those retailers? Were you able to kind of work through that narrative with her in order to make that something that was palatable for VC?
Yeah, so let me take the second one first, and then I'll do the other one, which was the story that needed to be told, as you can imagine, is really, you've built a platform. Like, you have a business, but you've built the platform. How do you talk about this platform and what this platform can do from what it is today to 1,000 times that, right? And that was the big thing for her, was kind of like unlocking that idea set of like, what can you really turn this business into? Like, if you can get every brand on Shopify to sell its excess inventory to you because you're installed in their application and they're just literally looked in and you're linking in, you're doing that, in addition to this big giant physical network you have and everything, right? Like, how do you translate that? Like, how do you make what you have now special and more? It's like, it's special now, but how do you scale it up significantly? And that story of how you do that is critical to every investor in getting funding. And I don't think, most founders have that very well executed when they first start. They have their idea and they know what it is, but it's like really crafting that narrative, like you just said, Kimberly, about like, how do I extend this platform significantly beyond what it is today and really take it to where it needs to be? That's kind of the biggest thing. It's not a pivot, it's like a big extension, right? So, and then the second, sorry, you were saying like circular economy. I would say, this is just my feedback, because I see a lot of these businesses and I look at a lot of their valuations these days, which is that sustainability is something that every brand wants to do and they talk about it, but at the end of the day, when the bottom line calls, like if they're not saving money or generating revenue from it, it gets sidelined. I think liquidation is a very separate space from circular economy. And I think liquidation, especially right now, given the glut of supply chain that everyone planned for, and now the quote unquote recession that's coming, like there's just a massive amount of supply that needs to get thrown. And I think there always will be, but right now is like prime point for it. But I think circular economy is becoming something that the consumer really wants. And the brand, like the consumer really wants, one, I think, to be able to feel like they can give their stuff back to someone and not have it go in the landfill. That's probably the most important thing, more than people wanting to buy the used stuff. I think it's really more the consumer wanting to get that stuff somewhere that can be of use, rather than thinking like they're throwing it in the trash. But I will say a lot of these circular economy companies are having a lot of trouble making ends meet on making their businesses scale and profitable when it comes down to it, because it all sounds great and it sounds really awesome, but it's a really tough business to be in. It's a very labor intensive business to be in as well, because of the refactoring and I mean, Lucas knows this exactly, right? Like, furniture's one thing, but every single shoe and every single bag and every single thing that needs to be inspected and cleaned to get ready for restock, it's a tough business to be in.
Definitely agree, Andrew. Kim, do you want me to expound on that particular point?
Yes, please.
Sure. So on the subscription and like specifically circular, like Andrew's totally right there. Like, it is, Furnish as a business now operates in 9 like metro areas, and we have to have warehouses in every one of the markets. We can't just drop ship stuff, because we have to be able to take the stuff back in order to refurbish it. We have refurb techs, so you end up having to develop a significant amount of product knowledge so that your team knows how to, refinish or refurbish a given top. Like, you have to pick, and you have to be very particular about inventory selection, right? Because like manufactured woods, for example, are not as easy to refurbish as hardwoods, but hardwoods are more expensive. So all of a sudden you get deep into the world of Andrew of leverage finance and amortization depreciation schedule. So when you take on a business like that, it is not as simple as most linear retail e-com is. And so there's a lot of that,
I didn't know when I co-founded the business with Michael. Thank God Michael happened to be a leveraged finance M&A banker who really thinks in that way. And then we hired really thoughtful operation folks like, our president and COO, Kristen, opened fulfillment centers for Amazon for the first 10 years of her career, roughly. So she really understood the operations side of the business. But to Andrew's point, it's CapEx intensive, it's OpEx intensive, and that's an area of your business that ends up moving away from Andrew's to a certain extent, potentially like technology being at play, and it's just human capital intensive. So as much as like, my day-to-day responsibilities before leaving the business, August of last year, like we had to build like thoughtful inventory and asset management systems to keep track of this inventory, which is very different again than linear retail, where you only think about getting it out the door. And Happy Returns is obviously thinking about reverse logistics on the other side, but having to think about the entire thing is very different about thinking about businesses in general. I think the other thing I would say to Andrew's point is like millennial and maybe more particular Gen Z have a significant appetite for sustainability and like positive climate change related activity, but oftentimes convenience and cost or value comes ahead of those. So like if you ask them to stack rank, which by the way, Furnish asks our customers to stack rank our value props all the time, sustainability always made it on the list of things that matter, but convenience and value always made it higher or tied with it, right? So there was an expectation that we still be providing all the sort of things that they would expect from a linear retail brand. So higher burden, yet trying to achieve those sort of sustainability goals, which is why, there's businesses that I won't name that are in the furniture retail space that are very large businesses globally who still haven't figured out circularity because it's a challenge. So they're trying to eke their way into it through things like spare parts programs, where they maybe extend the life cycle of a chair by offering multiple legs, but they're not taking repossession of the entire chair and putting it back into a home again, which maybe begs the question, if you're thinking about circularity, are there other elements of circularity that you can fulfill that is not taking the entire good back, that is way easier from an operations perspective than, furniture is big ass piece. It's a big ass asset, right? That's going in and out and has multiple people involved to carry it. And you cannot use traditional third-party logistics providers for the most part. So the burden's much higher. So buyer beware when deciding to create that sort of business. I love it. And I would have not done it again, AKA I would have done it again. But it's very challenging.
Awesome. This is such an incredible conversation. We have about 10 minutes left. I want to very quickly do maybe one, maybe two blind mentor recaps. So Lucas or Molly, Andrew, I'm going to say Max Retail kind of yours and with a blind, but Lucas or Molly, if either of you have like a terrific example of an e-commerce company that you mentored for that you want to talk through, and we can keep it blind so you can, have a little bit more space to discuss specifics. I would love that. And then I'm going to leave the last 5 minutes for Matt to just kind of wrap us up and talk about how amazing the program is. And we all know how amazing Matt is. So if he wasn't here, we talk about him, but we're going to let him talk about himself. So one blind recap, Molly, Lucas, who's going to do it?
I have one that's top of mind and I won't name them, but they ended up taking maybe an earlier exit path than some companies. So I opted to go M&A earlier following graduation from the program, raised some venture capital, but decided in their context that there was maybe strength in numbers by combining their forces with an existing business in the e-com space. So they were an omni-channel company, and in the throes of the pandemic, trying to figure out whether their business could stand alone. They had built up a material business in and of themselves, but thought like, this might be better as a 2 + 2 = 5 scenario. And is that the right path for us? And they leveraged, my insight thinking about distribution of their particular product into physical retail. Was that a long slog they wanted to do? So there's like, I guess what I'm getting at is there are hard conversations that you get to have people as part of the bubble who contemplate those things with you in a way that your investor partner may want to push you to do far more than is possible for you. But your peer mentor or the Andrew who steps in as a CFO mind, who looks at your balance sheet and all of your financial statements and says, I'm not really sure it's there for you. So what are you going to do to make this thing work otherwise? And in their case, like they had cash in the bank, they could have done it, but they had more opportunity for success taking an early acquisition path, which is non-traditional in terms of what you hear in terms of the entrepreneur VC ecosystem of podcasts, et cetera. but it was a very wise decision for them. They both made material money as founders. And guess what? They're going to get to do it again in roughly 2 years when their golden handcuffs evaporate. And they made a great business. So there's nothing wrong with making great businesses. It doesn't have to be a lifestyle business that is derided by the public. Instead, they did well, their family did well, and their investors did well. And those hard conversations happen. So better that than the 9 out of 10 who don't make it past the pre-seed stage.
Molly, you have a quick one?
Yeah, I'll switch gears a little bit and talk about fundraising. I think that's a part that, especially now that I'm sitting on the other side of the table, I just every day appreciate more and more, looking back the things that I did right and the things that I did wrong when I was fundraising, talking to investors. And something that I've really come to realize is maybe sometimes even the inverse relationship of how good someone is at fundraising and how they are as an operator. And it's funny that those things, one thinks they're correlated, I think they are not, and sometimes inversely so. And so I think a lot of insight that I find in my mentoring sessions that I usually kind of start with is, okay, let's talk through how you tell your story. Let's talk through what you actually do. It's kind of amazing to me how few people can articulate, like, what do you actually do? Like, don't throw out all these words. Don't tell me about, like, what do you do? What does your product do? Like, what is the pain point you're solving? And really honing in on that, and then thinking about how to tell that in a really compelling way that capitalizes on all of the, the thought that you've put into it and all the experience you put into it. That's no small feat. And I think a lot of people under-index and under-invest in the time and the work and the iterations of really honing that storyline and how to tell that to investors. So anyway, you said to make it quick, so I'll wrap up by saying that's an area that I think I love to help founders with on sort of all day, every day, because I think that there are a lot of founders who often, undersell themselves and therefore aren't able to raise, even though they could be sitting on such a great business.
Excellent. I can't believe how fast this all went. I'm going to take the last 5 minutes, hand it over to Matt Kozlov to kind of just talk us through what he's excited about for spring 2023. Any thoughts? Matt, I've been talking to a bunch of folks that are planning to apply, and they want quick tips. They want pro tips. They want to know how they stand out in the application process. So I'll leave that to you to kind of talk about and take us home.
Sure. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Alex. Thank you to all of our amazing mentors and our alum for organizing this. I think it's a great indication that this really is a community-driven program. Our whole approach at Techstars is to surround our founders with world-class entrepreneurs, senior executives from Fortune 500 companies, investors who believe in mentoring, and put the most incredible people in front of our most incredible founders, and magic happens. And so this is a really fun format, I think, for us to talk about the program. In terms of tips on how to get in, to be honest, the best path is to make sure that Kim, myself, and Alex know what you're working on. Don't build behind a iron curtain. Talk to us, show us your progress, send us updates, be on our radar, be consistently showing us that every couple weeks you're making progress in your business and that you're good at asking for help, that you're humble, that you are the kind of founder who takes value out of every interaction with a mentor, with a customer, with an investor. We find that Techstars is so incredible at providing resources and support and connections and advice and amazing mentorship to our founders. But if a founder can't ask for help and be humble and coachable, then they don't get as much value out of the program. I would say definitively the best founders, I don't know, Andrew was talking about Mel at Max Retail, and I think she's a great example. Every meeting is an opportunity for our founders to get value. We just wrapped up Mentor Magic in the beginning of this week. Our founders met hundreds of mentors, and the amount of value exchange that happened between them is just astounding in a short period of time. The other thing that really shines through when we're looking at founders or we're looking at companies is the founders themselves. Are you that energetic, passionate person who's going to bust through walls no matter how hard their business is? Those sleepless nights where you're not sure if you're going to make it, those months and weeks where your cash in the bank is dwindling, when you've just gotten 30 rejection letters or notes from VCs and nothing's going your way. Those are the types of founders who pull through and have the grit to make their business successful no matter what. It's easy to build a business when everything is going well. We are looking for the grit and humility when things aren't going well. And we're really committed to supporting founders who are committed to their customers' problems. We're really looking for founders who are deeply passionate about the problem they're solving, not the technology they're building, but the problem they're solving. We're just obsessed and we're put on this planet to solve this problem, even if it's not one that I'm particularly excited about. And I'll give a great example. Shiloh Johnson is the CEO of Compliant. It's a B2B SaaS company, not an e-com company. It's a tax compliance software platform for SMBs. I don't have a deep passion for tax compliance. I don't know a lot about tax compliance, but Shiloh was an accountant for years and saw over and over and over again that her clients were making the same mistakes over and over and over again, and SMBs were making the same mistakes over and over again, and she set out to solve that problem. Now they've raised a lot of money. I don't think I can disclose exactly how much, and they're on just a wild trajectory, and seeing that founder market fit is really important to us. We're also looking for founders who have shown they can build, shown that they can recruit, shown they can sell. And for e-com and retail enablement companies, we're looking for companies that have actually shown that you can get a customer or two and they are willing to pay for the product. Maybe it's a pilot, maybe it's actual MRR. But we are looking for demonstrated execution and ability to both build and sell.
I think that'll do it. This was an incredible session. Even if people aren't applying to Techstars, I can't imagine that this is not going to be an incredibly valuable hour of information with industry leaders, with people who have their pulse on what's happening in business, in venture, at exit, and in accelerator. So thank you all for your time tonight. Applications are open. Applications are due by November 30th. This is for the spring cohort, spring 2023, Techstars LA. You must be in LA to do this program. You can reach out to Alex. You can reach out to myself. If you have questions, leave Matt alone. He's very busy. But we are excited for these conversations, and we hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.